What is up? Welcome to the Reclamation. This is the first episode coming back into the new year. Oh my goodness. Was December not like absolute forced rest for myself? It ended up being that way, even though I had so much forewarning preparation that, hey, December's going to be a month of a lot of cocooning and hermit phase. Little did I know it's because I was going to be experiencing a lot of sickness. I don't know how many of y'all experienced this too. It seemed to be rampant, but the chest cold and affecting actually massively my vocal cords too. So we're back though. We're feeling better. It was actually really nice to have a break in December. A couple things I learned were like this idea of surrender and just letting go and not feeling like I have to show up this way in order for this thing to work out. Massive amount of just letting go because I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't feel well. So showing up for y'all here on the podcast, even interviewing others when you don't feel well, if the audience feels it, y'all feel it, doesn't come across the way that it's meant to. So December, really great lesson. Second, in the rushed feeling that tends to exist in December. We all know why it's there, coupled with a lot of messaging coming my way. And I know my algorithm is kind of set up this way, but a lot of messaging coming my way, promoting slowness, promoting following the wheel of the year calendar rather than the Gregorian calendar, which is something we're all used to. The wheel of the year points towards springtime being more of the period where we come out from our hibernation, our deep darkness, where we've learned all of these really important internal lessons that we can bring back out into the sunshine. And that's the time period where we're really setting our goals, really stating what can be created this coming year. So there's a lot of that coming out too. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to experiment here and dive into this. I've also been getting my own education in more embodiment practices. So that'll be fun to bring out to y'all. Okay, so let's get going with the intro to this specific episode. I want you to know the extended version is on YouTube. So if you want to hear Stephanie, my guest Stephanie, and I, at the beginning of the episode, I kind of show up frazzled and not embodied, not grounded. And she, being a coach and somatic practitioner, she used a lot of her tools, and we walk through this beautiful practice in the beginning of the episode that I have cut out for all platforms aside from YouTube. So if you want the extended version, go to YouTube. The link is in the show notes. This episode with Stephanie really highlights elements of an enriched life experience that comes from being connected to your body, connected to the earth, connected to each other, connected to our ancestry. And we talked about how connection starts at the root, in our root. Another highlight from the episode is where Stephanie shares about pulling up our energetic roots because we experience trauma. This is such a beautiful metaphor as we can look at nature and the way that nature is interconnected in their root systems. Especially a great mirror for that is trees. But when trees experience trauma and or there's toxins in the soil, they will pull up their roots and reroute. We in our human state tend to get stuck with our roots pulled up. And so when you hear this part of the episode, think about the ways that you have pulled up your roots and how it might be keeping you from connection to the earth, like literally to the earth, pulling up your energetic roots and keeping you from interconnectedness with your various communities, with others. Stephanie and I also chat about natural cycles, the many benefits of following the cycles, just like I talked about with the wheel of the year, following the natural rhythms that are all around us. One of the benefits we chatted about with moving with natural cycles is when you learn to do that, you learn to understand that the cycles of change and transition are natural, and you can move through it and with those cycles with more courage and more clarity. So the episode heavy on symbolisms of nature and mirroring with nature. Nature can bring us into this delight of experiencing ourselves without the pressing pressure of our everyday lives. Okay. It helps us to experience ourselves outside our anxiety, our depression, our ADHD, etc. When you enter into the spaces of nature, that connected witness centers us and helps us to step into parts of who we really are. And perhaps you've experienced that yourself. And in the episode, I mentioned a book that I read that talks about the science behind that. Okay, as you listen, I have this question. I love y'all's thoughts on this, feedback on this. The question is, we are an ever evolving species. Everything around us speaks to change. So why go back? Why reclaim these practices, these ways of living, even thinking about the ancient ways and how people, indigenous cultures, and those societies and traditions more connected to earth-based living? Why go back to that? If we're ever evolving, moving forward, why does going back to that improve our lives? Why is this something that's important to discuss, to teach, and to bring to the remembrances of ourselves as a human species? So that's a question that I am currently sitting with and would love y'all's thoughts on it as well. Okay, enjoy the episode, and I'm excited to be back and bringing y'all more guests and more discussions and topics. Some fun things planned for 2024 if they come to fruition, which I would be really excited about. All right, have a great week. Oh my goodness, let me arrive here with you. I apologize. It was like some, some mornings it's like, oh, nothing different happened. Nothing got in my way. It's just like some mornings. You're like, oh, I'm showing up a little bit ungrounded. Okay, but what's fun about you, from what I know little of, is that you are into like energy work, and you are a coach, and you understand the concepts of being embodied and present versus like frazzled and out here, and totally understanding how it can come across very differently when you're out here. And I was thinking about our interview yesterday, and I thought, oh gosh, I bet Stephanie would be totally down, and this is me assuming, totally down with just a minute of a grounding exercise together.
Yeah.
I like it too for people who are say yes or into it, because it helps us to attune to each other better as well. Is there something you do with your clients at the initial part of your session that helps them to ground as well?
Oh, yeah. Lots of different things. You want me to just take it away?
Yeah, I think it's fun. Selfishly, I guess, I get to experience each person I interview in their craft for a minute. So that would be lovely if you're
Yeah, totally.
into
Yeah, I'm honored. Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking. And
that.
I totally get it. Some mornings are a little chaotic, and that's like It is what it is. We're modern humans, also trying to live present lives. So let's just take a moment to, if you need to make any movements, if you want to shake anything out, let any wiggles out, whatever you need to kind of get into your body, land into your body. Yeah, and whatever helps you to really focus inside. So if that is dropping your gaze, if that's closing your eyes, if that's looking out the window, whatever you need. And you can still kind of find that movement if you're not ready to stop, like really allow your body the opportunity to catch up with your mind. Yeah, so the mind moves, I think it's eight times faster than the body. And the body is processing so much as well. And so just taking a moment to land in your seat, feeling whatever it is that you're sitting on holding you. And maybe beginning to gather all of the little pieces and particles of you that are floating out around your body, out around your energy body, hooked into where you were coming from, the kids, the to-dos, maybe things that you have to do later today. Start to pull all of those little pieces and particles back to your center, back to your body, back to this moment. And don't think too hard about what that should look like or feel like. I'm just bringing awareness to this moment here. And so maybe tuning into the sensation of the air on your skin, or any smells in your room, or any tastes in your mouth. I always like to use plants or aromatherapy to really help bring myself into presence. And so we'll just use a little bit of agua de Florida to ground our energetic field together. And as you connect with each of your senses, noticing the sound in your room. Yeah, and maybe beginning to turn your focus to your breath without trying to fix or change anything. Just noticing your breath, how it's moving through your body. If it feels easy to breathe or a little tight or shallow. And if it feels available, maybe you can begin to lengthen just little by little your inhales and your exhales. Inviting your breath to move a little bit lower into your body. So if you can really feel your breath in your chest, maybe envisioning that your inhale starts to move down into your belly and into your pelvis. And maybe you start to consciously shift your breath, inhaling in through your nose and exhaling out of your mouth with a nice big sigh. And just taking some intentional breaths just like that, breathing in through your nose and exhaling. And maybe take 3 or 4 more, envisioning that each exhale is letting go of any tension, any tightness, any stuck energy, anything that may be kind of pulling you from the present. And as you inhale, breathing in the present moment, fresh energy, more life force, more vitality. Yeah, and maybe one more breath just like that. Yeah, and just opening to receive an intention for our conversation, asking for the wise and well ones in the unseen to come in close and support us for this conversation. Any allies that we have beside us, we invite them to help whatever is meant to come forward in this conversation to come forward for the highest good of all. And so it is.
So it is.
Yeah. And whenever you're ready, just coming back.
So good. Hold on, let the emotion. I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you. What a gift. That was lovely. I was like, this is just everyone should experience life this way. And the prayer, it's a prayer together at the end as well. Thank you. Just
You're
thank
so
you.
welcome. Yeah, it's my honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
And it is my honor to have you. I'm really looking forward to all of the things that we're going to discuss. And let's welcome Stephanie to the reclamation. You obviously lighting upon the podcast, opening it with a beautiful gift that you have there. Definitely was like, oh my goodness. I do my own practicing and grounding. Feel like I typically walk the earth centered, grounded in my body. But having the morning that I did I was like, oh, it's on purpose now, isn't it? Because you being able to show up for me in a time where I was more, you said all those pieces outside of you, all the things that we think about all day, our tasks, our worries, even our joys and things we look forward to kind of tend to run the show. And to bring them back in was so lovely rather than please try to forget those exist, right? To bring them back in and integrate them, I just thought was so unique and so good. And just permission to not have to get rid of any of those things. They exist, they're part of my life. Let's bring them in here so that they're not disorganized in a way, was so good. I so enjoyed that.
I practice a lot of somatic trauma resolution, a lot of different somatic tools in my tool belt.
Yeah,
So
too well.
yeah,
Okay. A lot of what you walked through is like, oh, these are just the beautiful lessons and tools that are taught. And so these are just things you picked up. Or were you certified in anything?
yeah, lots of different trainings and certifications.
Okay, hey everybody, we are going to take a quick time out so I can tell y'all about TBM, which stands for to be magnetic. TBM is a neural manifestation program that I have been doing now for over a year. I know. Manifestation is a hot buzzword right now, and there's a lot out there about the how, the what, the when, the where, and the why of manifesting. I actually love that. We are all different. I think it makes sense. There are a lot of different ways to go about anything, really. That being said, I am choosing to promote TBM. Not only is it science backed using neuroplasticity, EMDR, hypnosis, etc., to get you into alignment with your authentic desires, which means manifesting from the heart and the soul rather than the ego. But the program also supports my favorite theme, coming back home to ourselves. Outside of manifesting into my life the vibes that fit my authenticity, I've been able to uncover and heal so many layers of pain, shame, and conditioning that stood in the way of living a life where I feel whole and worthy inherently. Outside of any label, title, accolades, I'm worthy and whole because I just am. I am sharing TBM with you for that reason primarily. Coming back to ourselves, discovering our inherent worth, well, that is a reclamation worth living for. To learn more about TBM, check the show notes. I'll direct you to their podcast, a specific episode where you can hear all about the manifestation process. When you're ready to join the program with me, you can get 15% off the membership using my code MALIA, all caps MALIA, for 15% off. The link to the membership will also be in my show notes. Okay, love you all very much. Let's get back to the episode. Okay,
Yeah.
let's begin then with kind of an opportunity for you to introduce yourself. Where are you coming from? Um, the things that you are involved in with your business. Off the top, we'll start there, and then we'll just kind of dive into some of the lovely things that you teach and you discuss and want to forward in the world.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about all of those things. It's interesting. I'm kind of exploring this midlife point. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm mid
Yeah.
40s, and really this time in life, and I'm having a lot of conversations about this with the elders in my life, and also my other colleagues and friends, really exploring what the next, chapter of my life may hold and what really matters and is really important. And I really engage with my work and my business as a living and breathing entity. And so I recognize that as I change, that is also changing. My relationship to my work, the work itself is changing. And so I do feel like at this moment in time, I am in a bit of a transition in terms of what I want to bring forward into the world. I know the tools that I work with, I'll always, be working with. I know working with clients one-on-one and in groups, running retreats, all these things that I've normally been, doing over the last 11 years of business, I will do some iteration of, but it feels like I'm in a space and time in which I'm really looking to the orientation towards elder. So for me, that looks like a lot of what is the most sustainable in terms of, not even sustainable, the most regenerative in terms of body, in terms of spirit, in terms of land stewardship, in terms of, these pieces of what I'm able to build with this, the wisdom that I have of midlife, and I'm always learning. I'm always a student. But it'll be interesting for us to kind of dive into this conversation. I have no idea what's going to come out, but I will say, like, on the practical, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm originally from Michigan. My kind of official bio is, that I really support women to alchemize the tool, like the past conditioning and traumas and past experiences that keep them from living, the life that they were meant to fully thrive in their lives, to live with full aliveness. And so the tools that I bring in to support that are varied. But I really think the core aspect of my work is one about liberation, from a lot of the societal conditioning, all of those stories that we are told, things that we should be, shouldn't be. So liberation is a big piece of the work that I do. And also, I think one of the emergent factors that I'm really recognizing is relationship. Relationship to all that is, not just to ourselves, not just to our communities and our intimate circle of beloveds, but our relationship to all that is, to the ancestors, to the land, to the plants, to the non-human kin, and really looking at how to support particularly white women in reclaiming, being with a podcast, in reclaiming that aspect of themselves that has been lost from generations of violence, abuse, colonization. And it also feels really big and scary to kind of claim that as something that I know is part of my work, and in preparation for this call, I was looking at, I was like, what was the year that women were actually allowed to vote? And it was 1919. And, so about 100 years.
Yeah.
And then thinking about Black bodied people who have really been able to vote since, 1959 or something like that,
Yeah.
that there's a lot that can happen in a short amount of time. And so in this moment in time where a lot of the darkness, a lot of the demons are kind of coming up to be healed, what do we want to contribute? Like, what do we want to do? How do I want to contribute my part to the shifting of culture in my little pocket of the universe, So, and I kind of like foster that through, I do a lot of breathwork facilitation, coaching, obviously, lots of somatic tools. I am also a guide with various plant medicines. And so that's a really big part of my work. I specialize in psychedelic integration and plant medicine integration. I lead retreats, online group programs, lots of different like little things that I play in my shop, my herbal shop. Sometimes I even forget like what all I do, but there's the sort of like path forward for me is really focusing on the liberation and the relationship, and the integrity within those pieces. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if you noticed, I like got emotional with you speaking because I could feel that also within myself, and especially the story of allowing the reclamation of the culture, the heritage, the history, the story of the white woman. I think is, for me, is just like, yes, absolutely. So cool too, because the podcast is going to take a shift. So very interested in the conversation surrounding culture, surrounding heritage, surrounding the reclamation of the community aspect where diversity is allowed, expressed, and also, there's this very large conversation happening with cultural appropriation and the ancient knowledge, the ancient ways returning to us. And a lot of us, regardless of heritage, are latching on to parts and bits and pieces of these ancient ways because they resonate deeply with us. So many of us are just a modge podge of heritage anyway. So it makes sense that these little pieces might resonate. And much of heritage and culture originates from something much older, much older, much older. You can just keep going back, and eventually we're just, again, all connected. And how these tools of the elder and their knowledge and the ways of being can serve us collectively in connection with one another. So your not fascination, your interest in this, and it felt so deep and knowing within you to explore this and to learn and teach this. I was like, yes, I'm feeling it as well. I'm very excited to see results that might come from these conversations. And I was curious about what you said, that it feels really big and scary. I would love for you to expand upon the aspects that feel big and scary for you. And you don't have to go deep, but I believe that when we share our own stories as to what brought me here, it really can add a depth of connection and resonance with the person, especially with a coach or someone that you deem worthy to teach you and guide you through your life?
Mm. Yeah, wow. There are so many different facets of this, like so many different places that I could go with this answer. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I'll speak to, the path that I feel like I'm being called to walk now, um, around this relationship piece, and really doing like deep root work, repair work for a lot of the harm that has been created, um, from our ancestors, our white ancestors, and I don't want to have like a conversation necessarily about race. I think what I want to say is that I've spent a lot of time in Central and South America, and have studied with elders in Peru, for many years now. And a couple of years ago, I went through this really deep mourning phase of very much seeing the kind of cultural effects, like long-term effects of colonization on the Western world,
Yeah.
from my time in an intact animist culture, from my time in a place where relationship with the plants and the animals and the earth and the wind and the water and the fire and the mountains was interwoven into life, and really seeing how so much of our mental health has been affected in the Western world. Our greed, I'm just going to say it, our greed.
Mhm.
So many of the ways that we relate to one another and our bodies as a result of this disconnect from the earth. And at the same time, I was really noticing a lot of the people in my world, clients, friends, family members, neighbors, all of these different people going through huge rites of passage in their lives.
Mhm.
But rites of passage being very common, like everyday things, like becoming a mom for the first time,
Yeah.
or,
Oh.
the kids leaving the house, to go to college, or you becoming the elder because your parent is the elder and can't take care of themselves anymore. And so seeing a lot of people, health diagnoses, these different things where people were crossing these thresholds of pain and challenge and change and walking through the fire of life, and feeling really lost and alone in the unknown. And knowing from my experience with my teachers over the years that ceremony, that ritual, that community, that connection to the earth is so powerful in terms of being able to come together and process these major life moments. And so the thing is, like, I have had a lot of my own sense of, am I worthy to carry the medicine that I do? Am I worthy to be a white woman supporting people in these ancestral ways? And I've had a lot of, support and received blessings from my teachers, my elders in the indigenous
Mhm.
communities, that have really supported me to work through a lot of that. And it's still something that I bump up against, because I'm like, oh God, like there's so much that I don't know. There's so much that I am learning. I will be a forever student to nature, and to the plants and to my tools, these different modalities, that whether it's, breath work or somatic work or making an herbal medicine, like those are practices that continue to unfold and evolve. And so I don't ever feel like I'll be an expert in those things, maybe more mature, more wise, over the years, that decade after decade, but still so much to learn. And so, with my teachers and speaking to them and having conversations about this, I've really looked to my time in these other countries to help me to understand, aspects of my own lineage that I can begin to reclaim. And my lineage of herbalism that I've studied for the last 5.5 years is called the Wise Woman Tradition of Healing. And it's really this invisible modality, or this invisible tradition of healing that it's like the tradition of our grandmothers. And it's really supported me to reconnect to the plants of my ancestry, the sacred smokes of my ancestry, the prayers or the ritual aspects. And that is something, I feel that as a white woman without an intact like family line, without an intact ancestral line all the way back to when my Celtic and European ancestors, the other whites, were sitting in ritual and ceremony and taking sacraments and, and expanding their consciousness through psychedelics. I don't have a direct line to that. And so much of what I have had to walk is to find ways to connect to the past that are informed and influenced by my time in Central and South America, but is not co-opted and not appropriated, meaning, offered for financial gain, like taking it and then offering it financial gain for financial gain, so like really walking that line of integrity. And I think so that's sort of my personal experience with it and journey, and it's ongoing, and there's so many layers and there's so much depth to it. And then there's this gap I feel that I see very often, and kind of have really had this experience over the last few years within my work with clients and what I'm kind of seeing happen in the world. And I'm not saying that it's bad or wrong, and that one way is right and one way is wrong. I think we're all America's a young country, and we're all trying to, America as we know it is a young country. Yeah. There's a history of, of Native
United States of America. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the people that walked these lands before it was colonized had these relationships and these ways of relating to nature. But what I see as this sort of severance from the earth has happened, that our culture, there are a lot of like younger parts at play, like younger internal parts that I see a lot of people regurgitating tools and teachings and practices that haven't been fully embodied or digested. For example, ceremonial leaders in the West, we're seeing this a lot in the psychedelic space, a lot of folks that have had one or two ceremonies, plant medicine ceremonies, and then are serving medicine themselves without the proper training, without the relationship to the medicine, without the relationship to the lands that the medicines come from, without an elder to guide them. And again, we all have our own paths, but historically, ancestrally, in indigenous cultures, someone may study working with the plants for 60 years before they hold a ceremony, and so recognizing that loss of deep integrity in relationships and our youthful parts that just want to be seen, that just want to, have the answer, that want to make money, that want to like use this thing that's really helped them and share it with people, which is a beautiful thing. But there's such a sense of urgency in our culture to, I don't know, get ahead, to earn. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's such a sense of urgency on so many levels within our culture that it kind of severs intentionality and an embodiment in a way that I don't always think. It's like the subconscious shadow of the Western world, where I don't know that people are intentionally creating harm, and there's no perfect way as we're reclaiming these aspects of ourselves, and as we're building the new and finding our way. And if you're a teacher of anything, the first couple of years that you're teaching, you learn a lot. And so I think that's something that I feel really, really called to is to support white women to be in integrity with these spiritual practices and traditions, and to really begin to do some of the deep root repair work of discovering what their own lineage is, even if there's not a written record, even if there's, you know, things that we have to do some research on. Like, can we really start to explore where we come from, so that we know, can we reconnect with ancestral wisdom from our people, so that we can start to heal some of that severance that's happened.
Yes. Oh, this is going to be interesting because like so much that you say touches me. And so we're going to have like lots of pauses for my emotion. um I feel that. I feel that. And I'm grateful to you.
Want to honor your emotion. I just want to
Yeah.
honor you for like letting it be here. You know, it's really real, and I don't claim to have all the answers. Like, let me tell you, I've had many like moments of complete like, how can I even, like, who am I to
Sure.
actually, yeah, and
Sure.
and
I
so
think that when there is a big deep call out from our soul, there's definitely, not surprisingly, a phase that we go through that we feel unworthy to answer the call because that woman who will exist embodied in the call is yet to be. And so the she that receives the call feels like she can't be the she that sits in the call. And of course, you're going to become. And I wanted to thank you for even allowing yourself to approach and to step into it. It's just so important. And what you're going to learn and then put forth, it's it's shifting. It's the cause of shift that's going to be so good. So good. So thank you for stepping into that. And every time you might feel the fear or the unknowing if you are worthy, just remember this moment. If I can offer anything, I feel that gratitude towards you for saying yes to even just approaching it. So I'd love for you to take us into the idea of root repair and how for the curious,
mm,
someone who has not yet dove in to their
mhm,
own reclamation, to understand how root is connected to mother, how root is connected to
mm,
relationship. I don't know if in your own practice root exists in a chakra or if it's like a combination of chakras. And also how when we connect with the earth, in all of those ways that you spoke so beautifully to in the beginning when you were in Central America, and you saw the connection of the earth and how it related into the connection people have with each other and other beings, um, and created this. And I do want to go into that more later. So, but created this sense of deep enrichment of life as you step through each
mm.
portal. So that's a second question. Let's go to the first, which is the root in how does it connect us to relationship, to mother, and to
Mm.
Mother Earth? You know, how might you guide someone who's just like in the curious aspects of this?
Yeah, well, I think, for many women, maybe one of the beginning um, sort of disconnects from our quote unquote root or roots is relationship to body. Like, being
Mm.
actually like in the body, in your body, feeling safe to be in your body, and I work with a lot of post traumatic growth, like really supporting women in post traumatic growth. And, in many instances, in our early upbringing, when we've had experiences of not feeling fully safe to be in a body, we start to like pull up our energetic roots. like that deep connection to self, to body, to life. Life becomes maybe a bit more unsafe in our interaction. It can feel unsafe to interact with life. And so my background is in dance. I danced professionally for 10 plus years. And so a lot of my own healing journey was to my relationship to my body. And I originally was working in nutrition. I was like, oh my God, there's so much more here. It's not about a good food or a bad food. It's really about how we're relating and connecting to our bodies, how we're talking to ourselves, how we are, feeding ourselves. And so relationship to body, I think, is the first kind of root, quote unquote, root that we have access to. It's like a healthy, well nurtured child knows that they are safe in the world. They have a sense of belonging from their family and or caregivers. They have a sense of wonder, ability to interact with life, and one that is a little more free. And so early life experiences throughout life can start to create that disconnect from body, whether it is through traumatic experiences or, as most modern humans, experience on a daily basis, stress, where we kind of like everything clenches up and tightens up and we start to like go up and out of the body. Like so many of us are living from the neck up, it's just like the mind is running the show and I don't have that figured out. So, I think we all, we'll get to continue to learn how to be more present and be more in tune and connected with the culture and with the blessings and the challenges of modern life. But that I would say that the first root is the body. And then, in terms of that relationship to life, relationship to other, it's like we kind of are moving up the chakra system, I think, as I'm speaking. And, and I have, of course, studied the chakras over the years in a lot of different modalities. Again, not an expert, but definitely know a good bit about the chakra system. But as we move up the chakra system, each chakra kind of is relative to how we interact with life. So if the first chakra is like ability to be safe in life, then second chakra is relationship to other. It's like relationship to self, then relationship to other, relationship to power, relationship to love, to expression, all of these different things. And so if we can't feel safe in our body, then a lot kind of stacks up against us in order to interact with life in a way that is truly liberatory and creative and free. And so, I would say that's kind of where it begins. And as you were speaking, I was like, oh wow, for someone who's like, I don't even really know how to engage with this idea of root repair, like what does that mean? And like my relationship with my body is fine, or it of course could use an improvement, but I've kind of got that down. The next sort of piece is relationship to nature, I would say, like how we relate and interact with nature, and the reverence that we have for life itself, the reverence that we have for all living things, for other humans, and of course, children, and also the natural, like elements, like the water, the air, the mountains, the earth, the fire. Those are our relatives too. We're in relationship with them too, though they're our kin as well. And same thing goes for the plants and the animals. And so can we have reverence for all of life and all living things? And I think a lot of people naturally feel that connection to nature. It's like so many of us know if we're like having a hard time, getting out in nature is going to help support us to like feel better, and feel back to ourselves. And there's like research that supports how just being in nature starts to shift the programming of the brain, the our felt sense of like ourselves. Like it expands. Being in nature expands our sense of self in a lot of beautiful ways. And so having that relationship to nature is something that can be so healing and so beautiful. And then kind of like taking it a little bit deeper is our relationship to the cycles and the rhythms of the earth, which if we don't know it from the mind, like if we're not like consciously kind of marking and tracking, the different moon phases or really like the different energetic shifts of the seasons,
Yeah.
like we deeply know on a cellular level, we're so deeply connected to the cycles of and rhythms of the earth that when we start to learn about them, everything makes sense. And we kind of like can relax because we start to have a different way to manage our time and our energy. And one of my early teachers in holistic health, Elisa Vitti, taught something about called embodied time management, and which was essentially like educating women about the different phases of their cycle, their moon cycle, their menstrual cycle, and how to approach each phase from a holistic lens in terms of food, in terms of exercise, sex, like socializing, and there's that sort of arc or ebb and flow of our menstrual cycle as women is also reflected in the seasons and the cycles of the moon. And so when we can start to really like study nature, watch nature, live in tandem and in alignment with nature in this way that allows us to be connected to something bigger and greater than the Gregorian calendar and the, regular
Yeah.
clock, it's like things start to feel a little bit, I don't want to say easier because like life may never feel easier, but it starts to feel simpler and things kind of make more sense. And we can understand that, you know, there are cycles and rhythms within us and in the earth. And that when we can kind of observe them happening in nature and also observe them within our own beings and bodies and lives, then we can lean in to the sort of cycles of transformation in our life with a lot more courage. It's not just like, oh my God, I'm in a quote unquote winter where I'm in a transition and everything feels like it's changing, and I'm going to be done for kind of thing, like this
Right.
existential
Right.
moment. It's like, no, after winter comes spring, and I was recently running a shorter breathwork group series, and I was teaching them about the cycles and rhythms of nature and how that relates to kind of the spiritual cycles of death and rebirth. And it was the most impactful session of the whole series, and one that I think people walked away with the most, I don't know, like new awareness around. And I was like, oh, it's so embodied for so many of us, but we don't always recognize it. But when we can name it and when we can see it, then it really begins to create a sense of ease.
Yeah.
That deep root connection to the earth is our belonging. It is the bridge, for us and for our own indigeneity. So if we can really connect back to the earth, if we can really connect back to how we relate to all living things, to cycles, to rhythms, to seasons, to, the tides, the moon, that starts to shift a lot within us and around us because we're really listening, we're really interacting with life versus just the conditioning or just what the mind dictates.
Yeah. And it sort of speaks to midlife crisis
Yes.
and the death and the rebirth. And if we are instead educated in a way that we understand this is natural, there's not crisis. And it's the crisis and the fear of crisis, the impending crisis, and also the experience of past crisis that keeps us in that state of vigilance against crisis. Something you did say about the sense of ease, and you're like, I don't want to say life is easier, but there is a sense of that. And you said that you can relax, and I really know for myself and like to teach myself that when we gain awareness and understanding, oh my gosh, so much falls away that we carry that's unnecessary. And there is this sense of relax that comes with it. I also wanted to speak to the root and oh, it was just so beautiful, the visual that I got. Beautiful and so sorrowful in a way too. Um, the root of women that you speak to, and men too in their way, and that we pull them up
Mm-hmm.
inside of ourselves. And so we're no longer stretching down and out. And when you study nature, you study especially trees and the relationship that they have with one another and how
Mm.
intertwined they are in their root system, how they support each other in their root system. And they do also, in this pulling away, they pull away from spaces in the earth that have the toxic chemicals in them. And as we, in our human body, pull away from things that don't feel good, but we remain stuck in that pull away, that you were speaking to. And um, there is a book called The Last Child in the Woods. And it talks about, I read it. I read it because my son was definitely the type you would put on medication because he's so like outrageously active. And I didn't want that for him. So I read this book and it talks about being in nature and what that does to you at a cellular level, at a psychological level, at an emotional level, and a spiritual level. It's so encompassing as a medicine. So it became very important for me to get my son out in nature. And every time
Mm.
we did that, he returned to his center and still held the gifts of somebody who was outrageously active and creative, but in a more centered, balanced way. And I thought the comment might help anybody with neurodivergence. That's become such a very hot topic as something to initially to correct and kind of overlay with medication. And now people are more interested in how to move through life experiencing it differently. Nature will center you, it will reconnect you down into your roots. And I would love for you to speak to the ways we were kind of getting there, that the connection relationship with nature aids our journey that I like to believe so many of us are on, as the earth itself wants this. This is part of the cycles. We are here in a reclamation cycle. How connection with earth aids in reclamation. We talked about how it can aid in bringing ease and a sense of deeper awareness and understanding. So let's continue down that thread and how it aids in reclamation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful question. Where I want to kind of start with is my own relationship with the plants, and really experiencing from these like beings of nature, this like natural intelligence, a sense of unconditional love that you can feel when we connect with nature's intelligence. So, plant intelligence, if you've ever had a powerful psychotropic experience using an entheogen, if you've had a really beautiful heart opening cacao ceremony, if you've had a cup of chamomile tea with your grandmother that connected you more deeply, there are these different ways that or even sat under a tree, sat with an oak tree or a pine tree or some element of the natural world that you really feel called to, you feel a connection with. There is this sense of belonging. It's like this bridge of belonging that if you allow yourself to sit with your back up against a beautiful big tree. And here in Charleston, we have so many live oaks, and I'm so blessed to have one of the most beautiful oaks in my backyard. And it's really a guardian, and it's really like this being that I've created a relationship with over the last few years that I've lived here. And only in the last couple of years have I started to learn more about the medicine of oak and the spirit of oak, and how it really is a protector and a guardian. And so there are so many things that I could share about that. But when we can, say, connect with our bodies, with nature, sit at the base of a tree with our back against the tree and feel that support, there is this transmission that happens. That's not just some woo-woo new age concept. It's like our bodies and the planet are in a dialogue. They're in communication. They speak the same language, which is sensation and intuition and the senses. And being able to really connect and commune with the natural world through our bodies is something that is so innate and so natural. Like our exhale is food for the inhale of the plant, of the trees, And so when we start to spend more time in nature, when we start to have experiences with natural medicines, or these, like, forest bathing is becoming such a thing these days, where we can start to reconnect our very deep sense of belonging that is beyond the human, that is truly an experience of unconditional support, maybe call it love, of belonging. Like, human love can be conditional. It just is. Yeah. We've got an ego. It just is. Yeah. But the connection to nature is often a time in which we get to experience an egoless consciousness, an egoless energy of support, of belonging, of love, I would just say support. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe that we're seeing so many people turning to psychedelic medicines. And also we can have those same experiences of expansion by working with common plants. Like, one of the most profound plant spirit healings I ever had was with vanilla, sitting in meditation with my herbalism teacher, and really recognizing that all of these different things that come, these beings that come from the natural world, have a consciousness, and they have an ability to connect and commune with our bodies and our spirits in a way that is beyond the mind, and that is beyond our sort of rational or logical sense. And so sometimes having that experience of pure natural intelligence, of pure consciousness, can begin to heal people on a very deep level, because they start to experience themselves from a place of like, oh, wow, when I am drinking this particular like tea, I feel like I don't have anxiety, and whoa, like my mind is really clear and free. Like, who am I without anxiety? Who am I without these storylines? Who am I without, these ways of holding tension in my body that keep me from feeling a sense of safety and relaxation in my body? And so nature really has that beautiful way of communicating with humans how deeply supported and loved we are, in ways that humans, because we're limited, I mean, yes, I believe in like limitless living and all of that. Like, yes, okay, like let's clear the stories and narratives that keep us small, and also our experience with other humans. We're all going through our own stuff day to day, and so how we show up in relationship is dependent on a lot of different factors. But again, back to that egoless consciousness of nature, it's something that we can just feel, that pure energy of love and connection. And the more that we have access to that and can feel that, and I'm kind of giving language, like more spiritual language to what science is starting to be able to show.
They are.
It's like the more we can access that unconditional loving presence of nature and nature's intelligence, the more we're able to access that feeling of safety within ourselves, that healing, that like who we really want to be at the core of ourselves, because we have the opportunity to feel a deeper level of support than maybe we've ever had from humans.
It really talks to your initial point of entry, which I agree with top notch, is that feeling safety in the body. And so then in a reclamation of a self that has moments or longer stretches of time where it's challenging, it's filled with emotions, of an array of emotions, and it seems to be encompassing of your life. It's the crisis
Mm-hmm.
um, happening within, and without safety in the body, it, you're not able. In my experience, and in my experience with clients and in talking with others, you're not able to move past a threshold that the body says, no, we're not safe past this. You can't move past this. We're not safe. Establishing that sense of safety. And with nature, being the mother, being the parent that says to the child, I do love you regardless of whatever. That child, like you said earlier, well nourished,
Mm-hmm.
has this sense of belonging in the world, has great safety within themselves, can stretch their roots down and out, right? So I love that you brought that to nature being a tool, being our friend, being our parent, being our God, all of the things, just being a being there to help you to see your belonging, you're loved, you're part of the whole. For me, understanding my part of the whole was massive in my ability to let go of so many of the I think pains that I held as being a woman. Um, yeah, and I definitely agree to the sense of nature really being a teacher in that way. I loved how you talked about even sitting with your grandmother with the chamomile tea. It can be simple, and it kind of speaks back to the other part that I wanted to talk to you about, which was, and it. I don't know if this is a segue at all, or we're just changing topics. This is something that's been so on my mind. Somebody that came from tradition and religion that took you through passages of life according to what the religion stated as at this moment, here's a passage, at this moment, here's a passage. And leaving that behind, I came to this really unfortunate sense of emptiness because there was no passage
Mm-hmm.
anymore, because I left the passages behind, but still recognizing innate passages, like you said, leaving the home, even just adulthood, legal adulthood. That's a passage. Having a baby, getting married, all of these things, and the lack of ritual. I'm not quite sure what my question is, but maybe I just want you to talk to it and the things you've discovered and insights and your own curiosities here that could
Mm.
bring others into awareness of ritual and ceremony, adding a depth and richness to life and meaning, a
Yeah.
meaningfulness.
Yeah. It's interesting. Over the last probably 2 years, I've had more opportunities for, well, people have reached out asking me to support them or create a ritual or ceremony for them to cross a threshold. One of them was our friend Gervais that we've mentioned for her 40th birthday. She wanted something that was conscious and connected for her birthday. And we did, a bit of ritual in a women's circle. and I've had other, I don't know how much I can share about some of the other experiences that I've supported people through, that have been so beautiful, but just for confidentiality, like I don't know how much to share. But one of the beautiful things that I've kind of seen is that when we know we're going through a portal that's going to change us, no matter whether the mind says this is really small, or oh, don't make such a big deal out of it. Like every kid leaves the house at 18. Like why should I be grieving this, as a parent, or
Yeah.
all of these different facets. When we know that we're crossing a threshold that is going to change us, or that feels like kind of scary because we're facing the unknown, or it feels like there's a lot of emotion or grief associated, when we can create an intentional moment to process that, it can be so deeply healing. And I had the honor of being a part of an animal transition. Without getting into too much of the backstory, this was in Peru, and it was my teacher was sort of holding the space for that, and it was another very, very beloved friend's animal that was passing away and transitioning. And this animal was a cat, this beautiful cat, that we all felt so connected to because of the cat's, being, and also the cat's connection to our beloved friend who had also passed. So it was like this
Oh,
cat passing was sort of the final remnant of our friend and our teacher and our beloved. And we met that moment with a ritual and singing and drumming and making offerings. And it was so beautiful, and being able to be with other people and go through the process of really letting not only this animal, but this person go, that it just shifts you and changes you in a way that I think particularly we see in our culture, funerals, where it's like we have this short funeral and then it's like we're done. The grieving process is supposed to be like tidy and neat and short, and then we go back to work on Monday, kind of thing. And and so many indigenous cultures have days long
yeah.
funerals, days long processes to really allow people to fully grieve until they're exhausted, until there's nothing left. And that doesn't mean the grieving is done, but it means that that moment is met with a courageousness and an ability to really like go to the places they need to go, and
Yeah.
to do that in ways that they're not alone.
Yes.
So I think what I've learned about ritual, rite of passage, transitions, crossing thresholds, is how important they are, to take an intentional moment to process whatever that transition or threshold crossing is, and to be witnessed in it by people that we love, and how that allows us to move forward. It might not give us a perfect sense of tidy closure, but it may give us the courage and the resilience and the support to know that we can cross this transition because we're supported not just by, our people that we love, but also so many different elements of the unseen, so many different allies and presences in the unseen that are also with us, when we can really take that moment to cross the threshold with intention and reverence, and again, like engaging with life fully by meeting all of the emotions that come up within us, and all of the challenges that we may be getting ready to face or that we're leaving behind, but to not shy away from it and not isolate and suffer in silence, which is something that women especially have become really great at, for a long time.
Yeah. I loved that. We started our discussion off with a practice of slowing down and allowing that to just be a part of our discussion, our time together. Slow it down, and then we can be more in intention. There's more I want to speak to that, but it feels kind of conclusive. So I'm going to let it hang on for a second. I would love I've always been fascinated. This is not something I've myself um, dove into yet, educated myself on. But I've always been fascinated by the idea of making an offering and growing up in the Christian realm and what an offering is there, but also recognizing it across religion, but then across the practices of tribal rituals and indigenous rituals. There's offerings. So what's going on here when we make an offering?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's really beautiful. It's a symbol of gratitude, of respect, of reverence, of asking for permission, for if we are in ceremony space, asking for permission to do the work from the land, from the unseen, asking them to support us in the ritual that we're about to embark upon, or if we're asking for help or support, asking for permission, to do that work, and that's not to give our power away. It's to commune with the sacred, and do so in an intentional way that we're saying, I'm your grandchild, to the unseen, to the mountains, to the whatever, I am your grandchild. You are my elder. I'm asking you for permission to commune with the unseen in a way that is of reverence and respect. It's offering gratitude to the earth for all that we are given. There can be so many different ways of expression that translate through the practice of making offerings. And it doesn't have to be something that you overthink. It can be just if you have flowers in a vase in your home, you can trim them, and when they start to wither, offer them back to the earth and say, thank you for this beautiful gift of flowers. Thank you for this beautiful, this beauty that you create. And and just doing so, offering it back to the earth with reverence. I think our indigenous peoples of America, or Turtle Island, offered tobacco as an offering. Often they would make offerings of tobacco to the before harvesting crops, or in prayer make an offering of tobacco before council meetings or hearings. Tobacco is really seen as a bridge between this world and the unseen world. And so it's a way of kind of amplifying our prayers. It's a way of offering our heartfelt reverence to all that is, and doing so in an intentional way, and I think that's something that in my own practice has been so potent and beautiful, in terms of that engaging with life in a way that's saying, thank you, life. Thank you for the lessons, hard as they may be sometimes. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the blessings. Thank you for the challenges. Thank you for the gifts that are yet to come that I can't even see yet. Thank you for, these tears that help me know that I'm a human. And one of my indigenous teachers, Juan Gabriel, who passed last year, he was a Peruvian, Quechua elder, who would offer a despacho ceremonies, which are basically a whole ceremony of offering to the earth and working it, like praying and making these offerings to the earth, saying prayers for your family, for your your life, your children, your career, for anything. And you pray and you offer. You chew coca leaves, you pray and you offer it back to the earth. And there's this whole beautiful ritual around it. And one of the things that he would say was that he couldn't read, but he was able to travel all over the world and sit with all of these, amazing diplomats and other people, because of his practice of making offerings to the earth, that the earth would answer his prayers. So it's like it's like dialing in your consciousness to a frequency of something greater than what is right in front of us, and interacting with nature.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
said. It seems it's such a curiosity to me, this practice of offering. It seems to go back as far as I've known in history, as far as I've known, as far as I've studied in history, and uh, this practice of offering. It's like like you said, the word you used in our engagement, we're engaging with. And in our human way, this feels good to us in this engagement. And there's an element that's also fascinating to me of exchange rather
Yes.
than just taking, or always being in receive mode. And the exchange that happens, I think, aids to our whole conversation with relationship and belonging. And when we're making an offering, we're having an exchange. Okay, so thank you for showing up for me and for my listeners and for everybody that you show up for every single day, and mostly for yourself, for showing up for yourself. I can sense deeply within you that knowing that you hold within your body, you show up for yourself and are able to offer such beauty, such depth. I have not had enough of you, for sure. Um, your message for me today and the things that we've talked about again is that idea of slowing down. When we slow down in our lives and we begin to connect with the moments, even just like the moment of drinking to the moment of crossing a threshold, and how we can not bypass everything in life. And it does a lot, but one of the things that like light bulbed me was in my own life recently, I had to circle back to the time I got pregnant the first time, which was not desirable to me at that time. And I had to circle back to that 20 years later and resolve the whole thing of it, because there was no slowing down in it. There was no taking time for it. And it was just like okay, here I go into motherhood. And 20 years later, I need to decide to cross the threshold of motherhood. And
Yeah.
how we do it in the moment, we can save ourselves a lot of angst, and it can be more meaningful and in depth. So thank you. And in these last few moments that you have for me, is there anything that you feel you want to speak to? Anything that's left hanging that you can kind of, I know there's a lot, but that you can kind of put a little cherry on, I guess.
Well, I would love to invite you to
Mm,
maybe think about doing a ritual for your 20 years ago self and crossing that threshold, and just really being with all of those pieces and parts like that. I was like, wow, that would be so beautiful,
yeah.
to experience and be a part of. And I also just want to say thank you so much for having me, for opening the space for this conversation, for the work that you're doing and the women that you're supporting and
Mm,
helping reclaim different aspects of
mm,
themselves. And it's really just an honor to be here and to share this conversation with you, to get to know you a little bit better. And I think at this point in where we are in history in the world, the more that we can continue to activate and empower others, that it's really important right now. And so wherever each of us seems to be on our journey, I think if we have a calling to help and support and serve, that should not be taken lightly. And
mm.
that while the stories and the conditioning and the BS and all of the fears can come up, that's normal. And like humanity, the planet, we need each other, we need each other. And so there's no act that is too small to begin to create that ripple of change. So thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, my absolute pleasure. pleasure, my absolute pleasure. And thank you and bless you.
Thank you,
So
and bless you too, Malia. Bye for now.